Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed how some people only understand the value of light after darkness arrives? Have you ever seen how a room changes the moment a single important person leaves it? Have you ever wondered why your presence was ignored, your efforts were overlooked, your sacrifices were taken for granted, until the day you stepped away? Your absence revealed the truth they couldn't escape. Not your words, not your explanations, not your arguments, your absence. There is a strange law hidden within human nature. People become accustomed to what is constantly available. What is always present begins to feel ordinary. What is always giving begins to feel endless. What is always forgiving begins to feel indestructible. And that is why many people do not recognize value when it stands directly in front of them. They recognize it when it disappears. They recognize it when the message never arrives, when the support is no longer there, when the encouragement becomes silent, when the door they never appreciated is suddenly closed. Many individuals spend years trying to convince others of their worth. They explain themselves repeatedly. They prove themselves endlessly. They sacrifice their peace in exchange for acceptance. Yet the greatest revelation often comes not from what you say, but from what you stop giving. The moment you withdraw your energy, something extraordinary happens. Masks begin to fall. Truth begins to emerge. Reality becomes impossible to ignore. The people who claimed they did not need you suddenly notice the emptiness. The people who acted indifferent suddenly become curious. The people who took your loyalty for granted suddenly realize loyalty was never guaranteed. Human beings often learn through contrast. They understand warmth because they have experienced cold. They appreciate peace because they have known chaos. Likewise, they understand your value because they have experienced your absence. Many people spend their lives trying to be seen. Yet sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is your disappearance from places where you were never appreciated. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is revelation. You see, when you are constantly present, others can create stories about you. They can assume you will always remain. They can convince themselves that your kindness is ordinary. But when you leave, reality speaks louder than imagination. The truth begins to echo in the silence. Suddenly they remember the conversations they ignored, the support they overlooked, the care they never acknowledged, the loyalty they underestimated. And perhaps for the first time they are forced to confront a truth they spent years avoiding. You mattered more than they admitted. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they must remain available to prove their worth. They believe constant access creates appreciation, yet often the opposite occurs. Unlimited access creates familiarity. Familiarity creates blindness, and blindness creates neglect. The tragedy is that many good-hearted people continue giving long after they are respected. They continue helping long after they are valued. They continue showing up long after their presence has become invisible. Why? Because they fear absence. They fear being forgotten. They fear losing connection. They fear disappointing others. But there comes a moment in every person's life when they must ask a difficult question. What happens when I stop? What happens when I stop carrying relationships alone? What happens when I stop initiating every conversation? What happens when I stop sacrificing my peace to maintain connections that drain me? The answer often reveals everything. Some relationships collapse immediately. Some people disappear completely. Some individuals never reach out. And painful as that realization may be, it is also liberating. Because now you know the truth. Not the truth you hoped for. The truth that exists. Truth is one of the most valuable gifts your absence can provide. Carl Jung often spoke about the importance of confronting reality rather than hiding within comforting illusions. Many people prefer illusions because they feel safer. They prefer believing everyone values them equally. They prefer believing every relationship is genuine. They prefer believing every smile reflects sincerity. But life has a way of exposing what fantasy attempts to conceal, and absence is one of life's most powerful instruments of revelation. When you are no longer available, intentions become visible, motives become clear, characters become exposed. Some people will search for you because they value you. Others will search for you because they miss what you provided. There is a difference. A profound difference. One seeks the person, the other seeks the benefit. One misses your soul, the other misses your service. One values your existence, the other values your usefulness. And until your absence creates distance, many people cannot distinguish between the two. Neither can you. This is why separation often becomes a teacher. Distance becomes a mirror. Silence becomes a language. In the quiet space created by your withdrawal, reality finally speaks. You begin noticing who reaches out, who remembers, who cares, who invests, who only appeared when they needed something. And perhaps most importantly, you begin noticing your own relationship with yourself. Because sometimes your absence reveals more than the truth about others. It reveals the truth about you. It reveals how much of your identity was built around pleasing people, how much of your self-worth depended upon being needed, how much of your energy was spent earning approval. Many individuals confuse being needed with being loved. They are not the same. Being needed means someone benefits from your presence. Being loved means someone values your existence. One can disappear when usefulness ends. The other remains through change, distance, and difficulty. Your absence helps expose this distinction, and though the lesson may hurt, it also heals. Because healing often begins where illusion ends. Think about a tree standing in a field. People admire its shade. They rest beneath its branches. They enjoy its beauty. Yet many never consider the tree itself. They think only about what it provides. But imagine the tree vanished. Suddenly the shade is gone. The comfort is gone. The beauty is gone. Only then do people recognize what was always there. Many kind-hearted individuals live exactly like that tree. They provide. They support. They encourage. They protect. And in doing so, they become so focused on serving others that they forget their own value. They begin measuring themselves by how much they give rather than who they are. Yet your worth has never depended on constant sacrifice. Your worth existed before anyone recognized it. Your worth existed before anyone appreciated it. Your worth existed before anyone applauded it. And it will continue existing even when others fail to acknowledge it. The danger comes when you forget this truth. Because when you forget your value, you begin negotiating for respect. You begin chasing people who should be meeting you halfway. You begin accepting treatment that contradicts your dignity. You begin shrinking yourself to fit environments that were never designed for your growth. Then one day, exhaustion arrives. Not physical exhaustion, soul exhaustion. The exhaustion that comes from overextending yourself. The exhaustion that comes from carrying relationships alone. The exhaustion that comes from constantly proving what should never require proof. And in that moment, you finally step back. You finally become silent. You finally choose yourself. That is when the truth emerges. Your absence becomes a spotlight, and everything hidden within darkness becomes visible. Some people become angry. Why? Because they were comfortable benefiting from your presence without honoring it. Others become confused. Why? Because they assumed you would remain forever. Some become reflective. Why? Because they genuinely care and begin recognizing your importance. Each reaction reveals something important. Not about you, about them. The reactions of others often expose their expectations. If someone becomes furious when you establish boundaries, perhaps they benefited from your lack of boundaries. If someone becomes upset when you prioritize yourself, perhaps they were accustomed to being your priority. If someone only notices you after you disappear, perhaps they were never truly paying attention. Truth leaves clues everywhere, and absence helps uncover them. There is incredible power in learning that not every door deserves your effort. Not every relationship deserves unlimited access. Not every person deserves the best parts of your energy. This does not make you selfish, it makes you conscious. A conscious person understands that energy is valuable, time is valuable, attention is valuable, life is valuable, and anything valuable must be invested wisely. Too many people spend years pouring themselves into relationships that offer little in return. They confuse endurance with loyalty. They confuse self-neglect with love. They confuse emotional depletion with commitment. But real connection does not require the destruction of self. Real love does not demand the abandonment of dignity. Real relationships do not survive solely because one person continues carrying the weight. Your absence often reveals this reality with startling clarity. When you stop carrying everything, you discover who was helping and who was simply watching. You discover who valued the connection and who valued the convenience. You discover who respects your humanity and who merely enjoyed your availability. This knowledge changes you, not because it makes you bitter, because it makes you aware. Awareness is one of the most powerful forms of freedom. A person who sees clearly cannot be manipulated as easily. A person who understands their value cannot be controlled through guilt. A person who recognizes unhealthy patterns stops repeating them, and perhaps that is the greatest gift hidden within absence. It awakens awareness. There are moments in life when walking away accomplishes what years of explanation never could. You can spend years telling someone your worth, or you can leave. You can spend years asking for respect, or you can remove access to your disrespect. You can spend years seeking validation, or you can validate yourself. One path depends upon others, the other depends upon you. And true freedom begins when your peace is no longer controlled by external approval. The world teaches people to chase attention, but wisdom teaches people to protect energy. Attention is temporary. Energy is life. Every day you invest your energy somewhere. The question is whether that investment creates growth or depletion. Some environments nourish your spirit, others slowly consume it. Some relationships inspire your evolution. Others keep you trapped in cycles of doubt. Some people celebrate your growth. Others become uncomfortable whenever you change. Your absence helps identify which category people belong to. When you begin evolving, not everyone will applaud. When you establish boundaries, not everyone will understand. When you stop overgiving, not everyone will approve. But approval was never the goal. Authenticity is. You were not born to spend your life performing for acceptance. You were born to become who you truly are. Yet becoming yourself often requires disappointing those who benefited from your former version. The version that always said yes. The version that never complained. The version that accepted everything. The version that ignored personal needs. Growth demands transformation. Transformation demands courage, and courage often requires distance from people who cannot accept change. Your absence becomes part of that transformation. It creates space. Space to think. Space to heal. Space to rediscover yourself. Space to hear your own voice again. Because many people become so immersed in the expectations of others that they lose contact with themselves. They know what everyone else wants, but they no longer know what they want. They know everyone else's opinions, but they no longer trust their own. They know everyone else's needs, but they neglect their own. Then silence enters their lives, and something remarkable happens. For the first time in years, they begin hearing themselves. The noise fades, the pressure fades, the performance fades. And beneath everything, they discover a forgotten truth. They are enough. Not because someone finally recognized them, not because someone finally appreciated them, not because someone finally applauded them. Because their worth was never dependent upon external confirmation. The strongest individuals eventually learn this lesson. They stop chasing every person who walks away. They stop explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Instead, they stand firmly within their own identity, and when necessary they leave, not dramatically, not bitterly, not vindictively, simply consciously, because they understand something many never learn. Presence is valuable, and valuable things should not be wasted. Your presence is not ordinary, your attention is not ordinary, your energy is not ordinary, your time is not ordinary. You are giving away pieces of your life every moment you invest in someone, and that investment deserves wisdom. One day people may realize what they lost. One day they may understand your value. One day they may recognize everything you brought into their lives. But that realization is no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is your growth, your healing, your peace, your purpose, your journey. If others learn from your absence, let them learn. If others discover the truth through losing access to you, let them discover it. If others finally appreciate what was always present, let them appreciate it. But do not pause your life waiting for recognition. Do not delay your future waiting for validation. Do not abandon yourself while hoping someone else will finally understand. The most important person who must recognize your worth is you. Because once you recognize it, everything changes. You stop begging. You stop chasing. You stop settling. You stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop accepting less than you deserve. And when that transformation occurs, your absence is no longer a weapon. It becomes wisdom. A wisdom that says, I know my value. A wisdom that says, I respect my energy. A wisdom that says, I refuse to abandon myself for acceptance. The truth they couldn't escape was never simply that they lost you. The deeper truth was that they failed to recognize what they had while it was present. And perhaps the greatest truth of all is this. You do not need to convince the world of your value. You need to remember it yourself. Because when you remember who you are, you walk differently. You think differently. You choose differently. You live differently. You stop fearing absence. You stop fearing rejection. You stop fearing solitude. For you understand that solitude is often the birthplace of strength, and strength is born the moment you stop seeking your reflection in the eyes of people who never truly saw you. So if your absence revealed the truth they couldn't escape, do not regret it. Do not apologize for it. Do not diminish it. Honor it. Because sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from places where your presence was treated as ordinary. And sometimes the greatest revelation is discovering that losing access to you taught others what your words never could. Your absence revealed the truth. Now let that truth reveal your power.